Hey everyone, welcome back to Unlearn with Bianca. If you are tuning in for the first time, then welcome. On this podcast, we explore everything around self-healing, health, personal growth, the mind-body connection, relationships, and more. Hey guys, I am back for another solo episode today, and this time I'm coming to you from Bali. Those of you who have followed my journey for a while, you'll know that Bali has a very special place in my heart. Years ago, I decided to come here for a month by myself and, reset and just center myself as I was moving through grief. And I just had the most healing, profound experience. And I just loved it so much that ever since then, for the last 3 years, I've been coming back a month to 6 weeks at a time just to work, to refresh, to center myself. And I made this promise to myself a few years ago that while I have this freedom to move, while I have limited responsibilities currently, I'm going to embrace it and I'm going to continue to do what makes me happy. And I always come back to New Zealand a better woman. So today's episode was actually inspired by a conversation I had with a Balinese taxi driver on my first day here, as he was taking me from the airport back to my accommodation, which I'll share about soon. But before we get into it, I want to tell you about an exciting announcement I have. So I have been working hard on a new offering and it is finally here. My new group program called Self-Sourced is now live, and I was inspired to create this 8-week program basically for a few reasons. So I've seen the same patterns, the same blocks that keep coming up in my clients. I keep having the same conversations with my friends, and it's really inspired me to put together this really powerful program that is very aligned with my personal journey as well. So if you have been listening to this podcast, you will know that I've been through a huge, what has felt like rebuilding process myself in the last few years. And I've really taken the time to explore and think about what patterns and beliefs and ways of showing up that have served me in the past will no longer serve me as I move into the future. So I've taken a lot of time to go within, essentially, in the last few years. And I can really own the fact that I have, through this process, built a whole new relationship with myself. I have changed the way I feel in my body. I feel a lot more grounded in my body. I have changed the way that I deal with emotions and process emotions. I have more confidence in myself and I've grown in that way, and also the way I communicate. I feel a lot more solid in my desires, my boundaries, my wants, and I'm moving from a place of trust rather than a place of fear that I was in a few years ago. So if we backtrack to a few years ago, I was moving through a really challenging time and I really found myself back living in my head, and I felt so rigid in my body, in my shoulders, tight in my body, closed off, and living from this place of scarcity around so much relationships, finances, and that kind of thing. And that was a really normal response given what I was navigating, but I knew intuitively that to open up to life again, to trust in the flow of life, to start to attract things, I had to prioritize ways to build safety and reassurance within. And so that started this whole other journey of me really practicing building safety back into my mind and body. I had done a lot of mindset work in the past, and the body was a relatively new component that I was adding in. So for this 8-week program, this self-source program, I have poured my knowledge around belief work, the nervous system, polyvagal theory, somatics, and my new understanding around feminine embodiment and what that actually means. I've poured all of this into a group program where we will be moving through 4 different modules across 8 live calls. There'll be reflection exercises to do to supplement the live calls, and there'll be embodiment practices, nervous system based practices as well for you to do as we journey through this process. The first phase is where you will learn to dismantle some beliefs and identify blocks and shed layers of conditioning that are holding you back from becoming the most authentic, unapologetic version of you. And I'm going to really teach you around the masculine and feminine energy and how to create more balance. If you go back to episode 16 and have a listen around masculine and feminine energy, this will help you understand more. But this has been a really fundamental concept and understanding that's helped me so much. In the second phase, I'm going to teach you how to establish a deeper connection with your body and build this assurance and safety within. So we'll be working with the nervous system in subtle ways to connect back into the body, which I think is a really big missing piece of so much self-development work. In the third phase, I'm going to teach you how to build your confidence to express yourself, to have flexible boundaries, to express your desires and use your voice. And finally, in the fourth phase or the fourth module, I'm going to teach you how to really tap into your innate power to hold a vision for the future version of yourself and to work with your inner child. So connecting back into play, joy, pleasure, all of those things that many of us forget are an important part of healing. So if you are stuck in loops of overanalysis, perfectionism, people-pleasing, or you've navigated a really challenging period and you just know there's that next version of you to come, maybe you feel disconnected currently from your body, your emotions, or your femininity, which I know so many women are feeling this way, self-sourced is for you. And I can assure you that with practice, we can change the way that we relate to ourselves and feel at home in our body. I will leave the link in the show notes. We start on the 5th of September, 7:30 p.m. New Zealand time is our first call. Spaces are limited and the early bird prices end this Friday. So get in quick because quite a few of the spots have already been snapped up. And I have made it very affordable. There are monthly payment options. There is no other time I'll be running this program at such a low price. I think the most powerful part about it will be the group aspect, because I find that when we are working on ourselves in groups, having that support, finding that connection is just so powerful. There's nothing really like it. It's what a lot of us are looking for at the moment. A funny thing happens when I get together a lot of people in one group. They always seem to hit it off and it always seems to work really well. So very excited for anyone who joins me. I also have a private Instagram page where I've just started sharing a little bit more about these topics, and I will also put that handle in the show notes too. Okay, so moving on to today's topic, again inspired by this taxi driver in Bali. So as I was in the taxi getting to my accommodation, we had been sitting in traffic for a long time, which was okay. I was just taking it all in, but I said to him, "Oh my gosh, it's so busy at the moment." And he laughed and he was saying how tourists often complain about the traffic. They often get really frustrated with the traffic. And we were laughing and I was like, that is so true. You know, if people at home were sitting in this kind of traffic, oh my gosh, like horns would be honking, you know, there'd be people yelling out the window. In Bali, it's not like that. It's chaotic, but people are patient, generally speaking, from what I can see at least. And he was laughing and saying, like, these Western tourists, they really get frustrated with the traffic and they get really wound up and stressed about it. And I sat there thinking, yeah, that is us constantly trying to reach the next destination, not being present to what is. And it's so easy to take ourselves mentally out of the present moment and into the future. So today I want to talk on the practice of being present, being in the now. And I'm also going to link it into the work I do with chronic illness and the lightning process and why it's important in our health to practice this. So I named this episode, Be Where Your Feet Are. I really like this quote. I heard it a few years ago and it's a real simple one, but it always stuck with me because it basically means stay grounded, be present, be mindful, have awareness, and enjoy the present moment. Be where your feet are. Be where you are in this space and time. So let me start by asking you a question. How much of your mental energy is either going towards potential situations in the future, or you are drawing evidence from memories in the past which are often negative because the brain has that negative bias. So things that have gone wrong in the past, drawing on that and then projecting that same situation into the future. An example of this would be like, last time I went up to speak in front of a crowd, I completely fumbled and had a heat rash. Therefore, I'm not going to try and do it again. Or last time I tried to meet a new person, they just looked at me blankly. Therefore, I'm not going to try again because it might go wrong. So I think most of us can agree that if we're not mindful, if we're not consciously aware of our thoughts, this can happen a lot, okay? Because our brain goes in to protect us. If you think about anxiety, which is a protection mechanism where you're having fearful thoughts about the future, that then fires up chemical messages or neurotransmitters that send signals of danger and threat to every cell in the body and puts your system into survival mode. So purely by imagining fearful outcomes or what if worst case scenario outcomes, we can put our system into a stress response because the brain doesn't know the difference between what is real and what is not real or what has not yet happened. And it's the same if I circle back to that taxi example, sitting in a taxi, frustrated about why we're not yet at the destination or thinking about all the things that haven't yet been done or what we might miss, that does the same to the system. So often we're living in this space where we're like on to the next thing, that our brain has become so conditioned to think about the future, and often it is in a negative and fearful way. We think that by imagining every single possible potential future outcome, it will be safer that way and we'll have more control. But in reality, it just takes us out of the present moment and it requires a lot of mental energy. I'll give you an example when it comes to chronic illness and how the brain and body can become conditioned. So a lot of my clients with fatigue, many of them are coming to me and they are having daily rests or sleeps to get through the day. And many of them, before they have a sleep, let's say they have a sleep at 3 p.m., at 2 p.m. they start thinking, oh, how's my body? I'll need a rest. I need to make sure I'm in bed by 3 p.m. Last time I tried to get past 3 p.m., this happened and I was worse the next day and I couldn't get out of bed the next day. So they start that loop of drawing on the past and then predicting the future. And then that sends the body into a big stress response. And then they end up having more fatigue because the body's in a stress response. So it's like a vicious loop cycle that we need to break with our neurological patterns that sends different signals into the body. So this is just an example of when we're not in the present, a lot is happening in our physiology. It's the same with, let's say, me launching a new group program. I could go into thoughts around what happens if nobody signs up, and I can already see myself not having any sign-ups, and what happens if no one likes it, and I could go into all of these things. Yes, that would be an option. But is it really useful? Is it really useful to send my physiology into a state of fear? So when I do get fearful thoughts, because I do, I'm human, when they arise, rather than push them away or just ignore them completely and find myself in that freeze response, I take a deep breath, I drop my shoulders, I might shake a little bit, I notice my feet on the ground, and I say gently and compassionately to myself, I know this feeling is valid. I know it feels safer if you anticipate different outcomes. But in this moment, you can also choose to be here present to enjoy this moment and just focus your energy in a more useful direction. And that's what really helps me. It's just knowing that it's a focus. Am I going to focus all of my mental energy into the future? Or am I going to bring myself back to the present? And the more we can get into the habit of doing that, the more our brain becomes conditioned in a different way. And we naturally start to live more in the parasympathetic state. So I want you to take stock of where your thoughts are throughout the day. Maybe just pausing sometime at the start of your day, in the middle of your day, and at the end of the day, and notice where your thoughts are. Something really beneficial to ask is this thought useful or not? So it may be useful if you can change a situation in that moment, but it's likely not useful if there's nothing in that moment you can do to change a future situation. And that is where we can become really good at knowing where to put our energy. Another thing you can do to train yourself to be more present is doing things that bring you back into your body and connect you to your senses. For example, 3 deep breaths is a really simple one. A hot or a cold shower, maybe slowing down and really savoring a meal, really zoning in on your surroundings and just noticing what is around you, what you're hearing, what you're seeing, what colors there are. For some, something that can bring presence is playing music and maybe asking questions in a conversation, so practicing real presence in a conversation. And in my instance, it would have been with the taxi driver, like really putting my focus and attention on what I could do in that moment and what I could enjoy in that moment. Massaging different parts of your body to just bring you back into your body, pressing your feet down, or saying out loud or in your head what you are grateful for is another great way to bring you back into the present moment. And the second point I want to talk on around this episode of being where your feet are is practice letting go of attachment to outcomes. So the art of detachment, I truly believe practicing the art of detachment is one of the most powerful things we can learn, and it just takes practice. So when you hear the word detachment, you might think it's about like not caring or just becoming emotionally vacant and removed. But the reality is actually that detachment means you just put the focus back onto what you can control and what matters. Because it seems so intuitive to try and control any situation or any outcome or any relationship we value. A lot of us have learned that if you want something to happen in a certain way, shouldn't you just put all of your focus and energy into making sure it does happen and really like honing in and pushing hard and working to make it happen? I have noticed that when we get too attached with how something should happen and quote unquote should happen, it often causes us to really experience fear, which again puts us into that stress response, and anger because we have an expectation of how something should go and reality is not matching that. And this gripping on so tightly to control outcomes, this obsession with attachment to outcomes is mostly related to our past experiences where we have had perhaps an emotional pain and we feel things didn't go as we would have liked them to have gone. Therefore, the next time something happens, we try harder to control the situation. So if you're relating to this, forgive yourself because, we can't change the past, but the art of detachment is something you can practice. The more that we cling on to an outcome, the more that energy is felt. We can feel it when someone is trying to force a friendship or relationship. We can feel it when someone is so desperate for something to happen in a certain way. And that completely takes us out of a realm of possibilities. And again, like the theme of this episode, the present moment. So I'll share some ways in which we can do this. The first one is becoming dependent on a certain outcome. You want something to happen or you want to succeed in a specific way, and we have a vision of how things should be, yet we won't accept that it might not work out exactly as we have planned or hoped. And this way of thinking causes a lot of anxiety and it stifles our creativity. I see it with clients who want to get their health back. They are so driven by an outcome, which is amazing because we want a goal, but then they become attached to how long it's going to take, that they are inadvertently going to create more stress because it's taking them out of the present into what they haven't yet achieved. So therefore their brain's not finding evidence of the small wins, and it's putting our body back into the stress response. So the best thing we can do is to set an outcome and then practice that trust and detachment that things are happening. The second way we attach really tightly and it takes us out of the present is when we start idealizing or fantasizing, and when we focus on things being perfect or ideal, for example, a romantic relationship, that we can fall into this pattern of fantasizing. When we get too attached to an ideal, it can become a mental and emotional trap, because we are mentally using all of our energy again to go into the future scenarios, and it's taking us out of the present. And in some cases, it's taking us out of reality. In some cases, reality that life has challenges, people aren't perfect, all of that stuff. So this is often a mistake we make when we have a lot of passion for something, and we think that we're only going to be happy if we achieve something specific. Finally, one more thing we can do that really makes us attach too tightly is putting all of our eggs in one basket. So this happens when we don't consider any other options or possibilities except for the one that we've set in our minds. So the downside of having in our minds only one way that something can work out is we see any other approaches, any other paths, any other people, any other options as a bad thing. And we're so set on our one way. And again, this is taking us out of the present moment and potential opportunities that are there in the present moment. Because in reality, life is full of options, it's full of different approaches. But if we are too attached to putting all of our eggs in one basket, we can become limited in our ability to see different options. One thing I often remind myself, and maybe you want to tell yourself this as well, is that you may not be where you want to be, but you aren't where you used to be. And that just really helps me appreciate the path I'm on, the journey I'm on, rather than a specific destination and goal. And I like to think of the art of detachment, learning the art of detachment as a little game. So I set the intention or a desire or an outcome that I'm wanting, whether it be work-based, relationship-based, in life. I take daily action. We have to take action, obviously. We have to take steps forward and commit. I take action towards my goals, and I practice gratitude for what is currently working in the present moment. And then I leave space to be open to surprises. I leave space for things to come in so that I'm not tightly attached to how things are going to specifically look. Because what I've learned in my life today is that things don't always go how I anticipate them to go in my mind. Therefore, why am I attaching so tightly to how I think life should go, and just be open to what may happen? This frees up so much more mental energy and really allows me to be more present in life to what is happening around me. So guys, today is a short episode. Thank you all for tuning in. The best way you can support me is just by rating this podcast, sharing this podcast on your socials and with people you think would benefit. Of course, I'm super grateful for anyone that takes the time to do that, because it just means that more people can find me and feel empowered in taking steps to improve their health and their life as well. I hope you all have a beautiful week ahead. I'm going to leave some links in the show notes for anyone that's interested in my upcoming offerings. And I will see you guys on the next episode.